2025 housing market outlook. Americans face tough choices amid rising costs. America is about to enter an apartment crunch. Why is housing so expensive? The ballooning cost of the American dream, how one house shows the rising expense of homeownership, and finally, high home prices and mortgage rates put American dream out of reach for many. Joe says, just get the money from mom and dad. They're rich.
See, you just love to cherry pick the things I say. I said that in part. I didn't just say, yeah, just get it from mom and dad.
Mom and dad can just float you the house.
No, you got to save. You got to live in a house, a condo you don't want.
Yeah.
Then a house you don't want.
You have to buy a condo you don't want.
Yeah.
Right. This is after you live in an apartment that is out of your price range. Somehow you squirrel away some money so that you can buy a condo that's out of your price range. Mm-hmm. And then you pay the HOAs on that condo for a long time. And then finally you squirrel away a little more money.
Maybe it's a dilapidated condo.
And then you buy a townhouse that you don't like. Mm-hmm. And then you dump a bunch of money into that crap hole. And then you resell that for a single-family home that you don't like, with no yard in a terrible neighborhood. Mm. And then you pump a bunch of money into that dive, and then you can buy a single-family home that you're not embarrassed to show your friends.
Well, you make it sound awful. I can see, some goodness out of it.
You use me as an example because the story, if you're unfamiliar, is that my wife and I, we had a decent home, which, we sold. It was in Mesa. It was all right. In fact, I found out that our traffic guy, roundabout roller, actually went through my house. He wanted to buy it, but he didn't like the pine trees that were on the property.
Oh, can you imagine?
But he said, I really wanted that house. We sold that house for, I think, $385.
What's it worth now?
Well, they're trying to sell it now. It's come down. They were asking $900. It's come down, I think, to about $825.
Okay,
is what they're asking for it now. So we sold it before it exploded in value, which is tragedy. Mm-hmm. But we got out of that. And then we decided we have to pay off our debt. We got into a debt problem, and we got into the kind of the downward spiral thing, right?
But you did what you need to do to get out of it, and it was tough, though.
We lived in a camper. I mean, my wife and I, God bless her, we lived in a fifth wheel camper. Mm-hmm. Now, we were fortunate. To your point about mom and dad helping out, fortunately, my parents have a little bit of land in a remote area in Michigan. And so we paid to put in an RV pad, and we did that so they didn't charge us rent. We bought the camper for like 19 or 20 grand, something like that. And we lived in that in Michigan winters for 2 years in order to pay off all of our debt and save some money up, which then got us into a home that we like. Our kids were adults at that point. We didn't have 3 kids that we were trying to raise in a one-bedroom camper, Joe. So you really, I think for younger generations, you have to think, am I going to start a family or am I going to be a homeowner? And now we're at this point, too, where even renting a place has gotten almost unattainable because of, because there's an inventory shortage.
It used to be kind of a seesaw. It would be rent prices are down, home prices are up. Home prices are down, rents are up. Now, even though we built a lot of apartments last year, rent prices, isn't it supposed to be lots of supply and demand down? But for some reason, demand's still up. We can't keep up with the demand. So even though we built a lot of apartments, we're not seeing any break for renters or home buyers. And why the heck is that?
Well, I think part of this actually goes back to, this is going to be wild to think about. The problem starts before our seniors in high school were born. And that is that back when we saw the housing market explode in 2005, 2006, even into 2007, just before the crash, we were building at a very rapid pace.
Yes.
Then the bubble burst. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, we have populations that continue to grow at the rate that they've been growing. Now, granted, they're slowing down. But we haven't been building as quickly as our populations have been increasing.
Well,
so we have a shortage that we have yet to catch up to.
Not only have we not been building, also there's issues with the building too. We can't get the supplies that we need to build. And even if you can find the supplies to build a house, you can't find the builders to build the house.
Yeah. So you've got demand remains high. We are not building at the pace that we were in 2006. Supply for those, so you're talking about wood, you're talking about the copper, you're talking about the piping, you're talking about the PVC, you're talking about all that stuff that goes into building a home.
Yeah,
those prices have all gone up. We know what inflation's done to everything else. Mm-hmm. And who wants to work in construction right now? For Pete's sake, it's 90 in February. But also, it's tough to find construction workers. Now, I don't want to drag a bunch of national politics stuff into this. But I have to tell you, my gut, when we're talking about this specifically, is I don't see this getting better with some of the policies that are coming to fruition, at least in the short term. Now, in the long term, that could completely change. But in the short term, I see a lot of effort to round up anybody that doesn't have documentation, get them out of here. Well, construction, the trades, is one of those areas where we do have a number of undocumented people who are working. You can blame the employers for that, for not doing their due diligence and hiring people that are here without documentation. The other is if we do start seeing tariffs on these supplies that are being sent in from overseas, it will take a while for that to balance out. Now, I'm not gonna weigh in on whether or not the tariffs are a good idea or a bad idea long term, but short term, I think there's going to be some pain. And how are you possibly going to bring home prices down in the short term? And again, this could all iron out in a couple of years. And I'm not weighing in on the policy itself. I'm just talking about the effect short term. Could certainly be that we start seeing an increase in the prices of those supplies that are already so expensive, it's prohibitive to building.
Another reason, the last one I see out there for why aren't we seeing the prices come down for either buyers or renters, deals with investors. The rich are getting richer. So if you have money and you want to go and invest in a house, you're keeping the first-time home buyers out. You're forcing people to rent at a price, to your point, that is borderline unaffordable, and you're making it so they can't save and they can't buy someday. You're keeping the prices artificially a bit higher than where they should be because you've got the money to buy. You can come in all cash or mostly cash, and you can still keep the traditional first-time home buyer out.
Is that something we should even try to fix, though? For instance, suppose you're the one with money and you go, that's an investment opportunity. I can buy that house. I can rent it out for more than my payment. I make money. Are you doing anything wrong? No.
I'm not doing anything wrong, but it doesn't help this situation of people who don't own a home. It's making the haves have more and the have-nots. It's really, really hard to keep up with the Joneses.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.